You have found why we are Christians. My name is Kent Philpott. This is a conversational interview format, and we're going to be talking with somebody. She right now is in Los Angeles, and her name is Ellie Hidalgo. Hello, Ellie. We've,
Hello.
we've had a
It's
little
great
bit
to
of a
be here.
difficulty getting all this together, but there you are. And tell me right where you are, what's your location right now?
I am in a neighborhood called Boyle Heights, which is about 2 miles just east of downtown Los Angeles.
I remember Bowl Heights very much, and uh, and you're associated with the Dolores Mission.
Yes, I serve there as the pastoral associate for Dolores Mission Church and School, and I work very closely on the leadership team and work very closely with our pastor to provide the leadership to the church and the school.
And you're a Roman Catholic,
I am, yes.
Roman Catholic Christian, wonderful. And I met you at USC at the Dead Sea Scrolls exhibit a couple of years ago, Ellie.
I think
And
it's
I
been a
always
couple
wanted
years now.
to be able to interview you. So here you are. Give us a little bit. Oh, what's your full name?
My full birth name is Eloisa Lourdes Maria Hidalgo.
Ah, I love all those names. That's so good. And so, uh, tell us how old you are.
I am 52 years old.
Wow, I thought 30s for sure.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Must be that good Christian living is keeping me young.
Yes. So, give me your family of origin. I know you were born in Atlanta, Georgia.
I was born in Atlanta, Georgia in 1964 to Cuban refugee parents. They had left Cuba a couple of years earlier, a couple of years after the revolution. And my dad had ended up in Atlanta, and my mother had ended up in Washington, D.C. She was only 17. He was 22, but eventually they reconnected, got married, and then had me. I'm the oldest of five children.
You're the oldest of five. Okay.
Yes.
Well, now, just until a little while ago, while we were making time pass, preparing for the beginning of the production, I found out that the Cuban connection, and just a few days ago, 4 days ago, um, we had the death of Fidel Castro. And I asked your permission if you'd be interested in what your comments might be on that score. But it's not a political program, but I'm interested to know maybe what your thoughts were.
Maybe what I could do is share with you a little bit from a faith perspective.
All right.
I think one of the things that was hardest for my parents after the Cuban Revolution was the fact that Fidel Castro was moving away, from the practice of faith in the country. And actually, and few people know this, but he eventually wrote it into the Constitution that Cuba was now an atheist country. So the churches, my mother's church in her town was turned into a movie theater. The churches were closed. People in Cuba could not celebrate Christmas for 30 years. In fact, it wasn't until Pope John Paul II visited Cuba in 1998, and he personally asked Fidel Castro if people could start celebrating Christmas again. And he said yes. And that, most people don't even know that when we talk about the limits to personal freedom in Cuba, the limits of people of faith was, very limited. People could not practice their faith, especially during those first 30 years. And then the last 20 years, he started loosening the grips. When Pope Benedict visited Cuba, he personally asked Fidel Castro if people could start celebrating Holy Week again, like Good Friday. And again, he said yes. So it was interesting to see his own changes over the years, towards opening faith and then even welcoming Pope Francis. He seemed to have had a real fondness for Pope Francis and met him just a couple of years before he died. I'll be very interested to see exactly what kind of a funeral they have for him, if there are elements of faith in this funeral, or if it's purely a secular state funeral. My father, both sides of my family, my mother's family and my father's family, were devout Catholics, and so that was one of the things that just became a deal breaker for them, and their own discernment and agonizing decision about whether or not to stay in Cuba following the revolution. I visited Cuba 4 times, and some of the stories I've heard from people, like I have a cousin who is in Cuba, and she really wanted to become a doctor, and her family stayed. And when she applied to become a doctor, it was on the application, "Do you believe in God?" She knew if she answered yes, her application for medical school would be denied. And so she answered no. And she was accepted into medical school, and she did indeed become a doctor. But it was interesting talking to her all those years later. She still felt badly about that. She felt badly about having answered no on the application. But Cubans have, over the years, have had to make all kinds of compromises with their own faith beliefs in order to exist and subsist in that country, and in order to to just make it. So I'm looking forward now to people beginning to have just even more human rights, more freedom to practice their faith as the years go by. Pope Francis, he was only coming to the East Coast, and yet he's familiar with some of the big cities in the United States, and he wanted to connect with several different cities, even though he knew he wasn't going to be visiting. And so he specifically wanted to connect with homeless people in Los Angeles. That was what he wanted to do in terms of his connection to Los Angeles. He knows about our big homeless problem, and Dolores Mission, the church where I work, has sustained a homeless shelter for 28 years. And
28 years, yes.
28 years. So literally every night our church turns itself into a homeless shelter, and we put cots in the aisleways of the church. We even move the altar to the side to get a few more cots up on the altar, and we have up to 45 men sleeping in our church every night, and we feed them dinner in the school cafeteria, and we feed them breakfast in the school cafeteria. And a few blocks away, uh, we have a smaller shelter for women that's run by our sister nonprofit, and that has about 15 women. So when the TV station was going to be simulcasting Pope Francis, and we were part of it. We were invited to come with some of our homeless men and women to that, and as well as some other organizations. There ended up being like 10 organizations that participated, and it was just a remarkable experience to have him just looking at us and showing his concern and wanting to know about the struggles here in Los Angeles, one of the great cities of the United States, but has a very serious struggle with homelessness.
Yes, it does. And
Rewarding for us when we did that. We they actually asked us to recruit. We took 12 men and women, and we couldn't tell them what it was for. So we told them there's a very important meeting on homelessness taking place at 5:30 in the morning.
it was 5:30 in the morning. That's good.
We can't tell you more, but we can tell you it's going to be very special. So God bless them, the 12 men and women that went with us and trusted us to believe that something special was happening at 5:30 in the morning, and we did not let them down. They were thrilled to see that they were going to
Wow, that's
have a simulcast with Pope Francis.
as Paul Harvey would have said. You might not remember him, but that's the rest of the story.
Yes.
All right, Ellie. Now, I think your business card you gave me there at USC a couple, 3 years ago when we met said pastoral assistant. Is that right?
And so if that's what it said, it now has changed.
It's
I'm now
changed.
the-
Okay,
yes,
what do you do as pastoral associate?
So what I do as pastoral associate, I have different responsibilities. One is I I manage our church staff, and then I report to the pastor, and we work very closely, together to actually, we're in constant communication about what's going on at the church, and what are the projects that we're working on. I also administer the budget and provide oversight to the school budget, and work very closely with the school principal. The school principal reports to me, and I and assist with the fundraising efforts of the church. We're actually a poor church, and all of our 250 students have scholarships, from partial scholarships to almost complete total scholarships. And so we actually go out and raise money for our students, many of whom are the children of immigrant parents and low-income families. Most of them are Latino, from families are from Mexico or Central America. But we know that getting a great education that's solidly rooted in faith is a game changer for our families and our students. And so we're very committed to educating and empowering the youth of Boyle Heights from a faith perspective. Ours is a community that has suffered a lot of gang violence. And again, we know if we can offer a young person a great education and help them to just be filled with hope and love and wanting to be of service to others, that there's no way they'll be pulled into joining a gang. They'll just have too many goals and hope and a sense of purpose, and we find that to be true. So we have a big mission here, and at Dolores Mission, and part of my job is to just make sure that we're on track with the goals we've set for ourselves. So I work very closely with the pastor. He actually manages the facilities of the church, so I don't have to worry too much about that. But I actually do offer reflections sometimes in our liturgies, or other opportunities where I might get to speak with our parishioners and offer some of my own faith reflections outside of the services, but at different prayer meetings that we might have.
One thing I want to do is ask you to email me how the address or a way that people who see this program and want to give to the great work you're doing there at Dolores Mission, an opportunity for them to contact you. And I'll put it in this program and our second program too. So remember that, Ellie. I'll be emailing you and asking for that.
Okay.
You never experienced Latin. You never heard Latin Mass.
I did not, but my mother used to talk about it, because my mother, growing up Catholic in Cuba, she was definitely going to Latin Mass. And then when Vatican II happened, it happened in the years, just as I was being born, and that change got made. So I have never experienced a Latin Mass. I have only ever pretty much heard Mass in Spanish or in English. And if I've traveled to other countries, and I think I heard it once in Italian.
Okay. I'm just asking for details here and various things. And the second part of the program, I'm gonna dig into a little theology and your own personal faith a little bit, Ellie. We're just kind of getting going. Now, I know that the Jesuits. Now, you're associated with the Jesuits, right?
Yes. Dolores Mission is a church, a parish of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. However, the Archdiocese, the Cardinal, asked the Jesuits if they would actually run the parish, if they would be the priest that would be, sent there and missioned there. And they agreed. At the time, the Jesuits came to Dolores Mission in 1980. And at the time, the gang violence in Boyle Heights was just very bad. There were 11 active gangs in just a few mile radius. There were homicides that were happening every week. It was a very dangerous place to live and work. And yet, part of the mission of the Jesuits is to be missioned and sent to places that other people don't want to go. Like they are men of great courage, and they're willing to take that risk to go to places that have great need, great suffering, and bring shine God's light in those areas. And what is remarkable about what the Jesuits have been able to accomplish in Boyle Heights and at Dolores Mission is that they were able to animate and inspire and provide leadership training to the parishioners, and working very closely with the parishioners began to develop the kinds of programs and witness and that would allow them to turn the neighborhood around. And so Father Greg Boyle was one of the early pastors of Dolores Mission, and he actually, the way it worked was the women of the parish, the mothers of the parish, came to him and said, "Padre, our sons are two tracks. They're either ending up in the cemetery or in prison, and we have to do something about this." And so as they talked about it and discerned, they decided, what would really turn things around was if these young men had jobs. Most of them had dropped out of high school and weren't working. They were just dealing drugs and getting them mixed up in the gangs. So they went to nearby factories, and the mothers with Father Greg Boyle, and asked the factory managers and owners to please hire their sons. And the response was, "No way. Look at your sons. They've dropped out of high school. Look at what they're wearing. Look at all the tattoos. They're unemployable." And so they went back to the church and started talking about that and praying about that. And then they decided to actually start their own program to employ these young men. So there was a dilapidated bakery that was no longer working, very close to the church, and they actually were able to get it going again. They somehow bought it dirt cheap, or I don't know how they got to get into that bakery again, but they started making tortillas and other things. And sure enough, they developed a program where they were taking gang members and having them work side by side, and realizing that they weren't all that different from one another. And sure enough, when you started giving gang members the opportunity to work and make money honestly, it turned out that they actually were looking for ways out of the gang. Most of them
Absolutely.
knew that they were on track to prison or cemetery, and they wanted a way out. Nobody had ever offered them a way out. So Jobs for a Future turned itself into Homeboy Industries, and it is now the largest gang intervention program in the country. It
Wonderful,
started,
Ellie.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you may have heard of Father Greg Boyle's book, Tattoos on the Heart. Tattoos on the Heart was on the New York Times bestseller list.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. That's wonderful, Ellie. That's so good. Now, I want to get into the Jesuits a little bit. I would, I, I know very little about Roman Catholic history, and a little bit, but the Jesuits. Give me a little history on that.
So the Society of Jesus was founded by Saint Ignatius of Loyola.
Ignatius of Loyola.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So he was from Loyola, Spain, and he was actually a military man. He was a military man, and he was in a battle in Pamplona. The Spaniards were fighting against the French, and he was in this battle in Pamplona, and he gets his leg uh, is shot by a cannonball. So his leg gets broken in multiple ways, and he gets sent back home, to recover. And he spends months in bed trying to recover from this very serious wound. So there was nothing to read in his family's home. He started asking for reading material, and his sister-in-law gave him two books. One book had to do with the lives of the saints, and the other book had to do with the life of Christ. And this was a man who had not been interested in Christianity, and was a military man, and was also known to be a womanizer and drinker, and and he kind of had that kind of a life. But as he began to read these two books, he began to become captivated by Jesus and by the lives of the saints. He started to, one day he would think, no, I want to recover and I want to go back into military service. And then the next day he'd be thinking, no, I really want to become one of these great saints like Saint Francis. Or, he had different saints who were heroes. And over time, one of the things that Saint Ignatius is really known for is the practice of discernment.
The practice of
And
what?
the practice of discernment, discerning important decisions by the light of faith, discerning God's will in your life. And he began to really, this was kind of one of his first struggles. Was he going to go back to military service, or was God calling him to something else? And how do you hear God's voice in your life, and how do you make important life-changing decisions? And so this is one of the things that the Jesuits are known for helping to guide people in the big decisions of their lives and helping to hear God's voice in your life and creating a sense of practice about that. And I think that's one of the reasons that that Jesuits have just made very important contributions to our country and to the world. In the United States, they run 28 universities. The
My
most
daughter,
well.
Ellie, my daughter Jenna just graduated from a Jesuit school, USF, in San Francisco, a major fine arts
Oh,
writing.
that's
She
terrific.
specialized in fiction writing for children, and a great school. I've been there many times, and that's a Jesuit school. Now, what was history? What is the date of Ignatius?
So the date that I know most is 1540. So we're talking many, many centuries ago.
So it's a number of centuries ago. I had a hard time. Um, my daughters were thinking about going to St. Ignatius of Loyola University, and we went there one time. They
Okay,
almost went, for their bachelor's, but
that's great.
yeah. So so the Jesuits now they're still involved with Dolores Mission.
Yes, yes. So our pastor, Father Ted Gabrielli, is the pastor right now, and he's a Jesuit priest. And then we have another Jesuit priest who's associate pastor, and then we have a deacon who will be ordained in June.
Okay. Now I want to. We have a few minutes on. What I want to start exploring is you were born of Roman Catholic parentage. You were probably, what happened after that? You were baptized, and what are the processes that kids go through? You
So
were,
I was born in October, and by December my parents were baptizing me, and they picked two godparents for me, and they were my uncle, who was brother to my dad, and his wife. So they became my godparents, and I was baptized in the church. And for Catholics, baptism is very significant in that you're being welcomed into a faith community. So the faith community is pledging to care about your faith development, and your godparents are also pledging to care about your own development as a person, and also your faith development, and to be there, be a presence in your life for the rest of your life. So that was in Catholicism, we talk about sacraments, and baptism is that first sacrament. It's the sacrament of initiation into the Catholic community. And then I went to Catholic schools, kindergarten through 12th grade. So I received religious instruction and education in school. And then when I was in second grade, I made my first communion.
okay,
So,
now, was there a christening? Was there a christening thing, Ellie, at some point?
so I'm not really sure what you mean by christening. Is that like,
A
I would think of
naming.
it as baptism, but maybe you mean something else.
Maybe that was at the same time, or where you received your name.
Oh, right. They would have said my name in my baptism as part
Okay,
of my baptism.
okay. So your first communion, how old were you?
So I was in second grade. So
Okay.
probably around
Okay.
8 years
Did you have a
old.
little white dress on?
I sure did.
So that you had your first communion, and what I'm trying to lead up to, here you are. How did you get into the where you're at now? We got 2 minutes and 20 seconds, Ellie. Tell me how you went from the little girl first communion to where you are now. You got 2 minutes.
Okay. So, after I graduated from high school, well, actually, while I was in high school, my parents became involved, our whole family became involved in something called Encuentro Familiares, which was family encounters. And we had moved to Miami, and there was a Cuban Jesuit priest there, actually, who had started family retreats because he realized how hard Cuban families were struggling. Cuban parents were struggling to raise their American born children in Miami. And so we became very active with these family retreats, and I became one of the youth leaders with these family retreats. So that was when I first started to own my faith for myself, when I started to realize that Christianity was really relevant to even thinking about how to make family life go better. And then when I went to college, I went to University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia and got involved with the Catholic Student Center there, the Penn Newman Center, and was active my 4 years there. Eventually, I became president of the Catholic Student Center my senior year. But we tutored young high school students in juvenile hall, and we went to soup kitchens, and we did a lot of faith sharing as well, and liturgies, and we were very active in all kinds of different things. And then I actually had this period of time after college where I wasn't very active. Couldn't quite find my footing in any parish, and wasn't really active until I moved to Los Angeles, and I was married at the time, and we moved to LA. And then I was looking for a writing job, a job where I could write. And really, it was God's grace that took me to the Tidings, which was the Catholic newspaper for the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. And I applied for that position, and I got it. And I worked there for 9 years. And then once again, I became very active in my faith and have been so ever since.
Wonderful, Ellie.
Yeah.
I don't know how you did it. You timed it just perfect.
Great.
Just perfect. Now we got more.
Okay.
We got more, Ellie. We're going to close out.
Okay.
Well, we've been talking to Ellie Hidalgo. I'm going to get her name.
You got it.
I got it. Okay. And we've had a wonderful time talking. Now we got another part coming up. So be on the lookout for the second part, our discussion with Ellie on why we are Christians. So long.